phone vibrated on the kitchen counter while the house was still full of funeral flowers, and the screen lit up with her name and a message that said, "I'm safe." I dropped the glass I was holding, and it shattered against the tile because she had been buried 6 hours earlier. The timestamp showed it had been sent after we returned from the cemetery. After the dirt had been pressed flat and the headstone placed, I stared at the screen long enough for it to go dark, then picked it up again to make sure I was not misreading it. The contact photo was hers, the same one she hated because it caught her mid-laugh. I opened the message thread and saw no typing bubbles, no follow-up, just those 2 words sitting there like they had always belonged. My sister Mara had been declared gone 3 days earlier after a sudden collapse at home, and there had been no unanswered questions left to argue over. I backed away from the counter and sat on the floor because standing suddenly felt impractical. The house smelled like lilies and coffee, and the food neighbors kept dropping off, and none of it matched what I was seeing. I locked the phone and slid it under my leg as if it might move again. That was when I decided to go back to the beginning, because nothing about this moment made sense unless something earlier had been missed. 2 weeks before the funeral, Mara had moved into my guest room after ending a long relationship without explaining much. She said she needed quiet, internet access, and a place where nobody would ask questions. She worked remotely for a medical billing company and spent long nights on her laptop with spreadsheets open and her phone face down beside her. I noticed she had turned off all message previews and removed the lock screen notifications entirely. She joked that it helped her focus, but she kept the phone within reach even when she slept. On the 3rd night, I woke up to the sound of her whispering into the phone in the hallway, using a low tone like she was hiding from someone in the house. When I asked her about it the next morning, she said it was a work call routed through a private app. She laughed too quickly and changed the subject to groceries. Over the next days, small things went missing from my house, like an old flash drive from a drawer and a spare key from the hook by the door. Mara started locking her bedroom door during the day, which she had never done anywhere else. She asked me detailed questions about our Wi-Fi router, including where it was stored and whether it logged device activity. I told myself stress could explain all of it, and I chose not to push. The night before she collapsed, we ate dinner together and watched a game show, and she seemed calmer than she had in weeks. She asked me to promise that if anything happened to her, I would keep her phone charged. I laughed it off and told her she was being dramatic, and she didn't correct me. She went to bed early, leaving her laptop open on the table, and I noticed a calendar reminder set for the following week that read "Send confirmation." I assumed it was work-related and closed the lid. The next morning, I found her on the kitchen floor, unresponsive, with her phone lying beside her, and the screen already dark. The doctor said it was sudden and not uncommon, and there was nothing more to investigate. I kept her phone powered on after the funeral because of that promise, telling myself it was just a way to stay close to her. When the message arrived, all of those moments lined up too neatly to ignore, and I realized the story had not ended when we lowered the casket. I unlocked the phone with the passcode I had seen her use 100 times and searched the message details for anything unusual. The message had been sent through a secure messaging app I didn't recognize, one that did not show delivery paths or device locations. I scrolled through her installed apps and found several utilities designed to delay outgoing messages until specific conditions were met. One of them was set to trigger after a calendar event marked final confirmation. I opened her calendar again and saw that the event had been scheduled for the morning after the funeral. The description field was blank, but the alert settings were precise down to the minute. My hands shook as I checked the drafts folder inside the app, expecting nothing. Instead, I found multiple unsent messages addressed to different contacts, all variations of reassurance phrases, all timed for different future dates. Some were set weeks ahead, others months. None explained why. I felt like I was standing in a room where someone had packed and left without saying goodbye. I charged the phone fully and kept it beside me as I moved through the house, half expecting it to vibrate again. That night, I heard the same low speaking voice I remembered from the hallway, coming from her locked bedroom. I stood outside the door and listened, but the sound stopped as soon as I reached for the handle. The door was still locked from the inside, exactly as it had been since the paramedics left. I slept on the couch with the lights on and the phone on my chest, watching the screen. In the morning, I found her laptop exactly where it had been left, but this time it powered on without a password. A document was open on the desktop titled Contingencies. Inside were plain, factual notes about data access, message scheduling, and identity protection. One line read, "If I cannot respond, let them think I can." Another line listed me as primary recipient with no explanation. I scrolled further and found a log of system tests showing successful delayed sends. The timestamps matched the message I had received. There was no mention of illness, fear, or danger, only preparation. I realized then that the message had not been sent by accident or malfunction. It had been planned. The house felt smaller as that understanding settled in, like the walls had moved closer without making a sound. I closed the laptop and locked it away, unsure what else I might find. Over the next day, I received no new messages, but the phone showed background activity as if apps were waking up and checking conditions. I turned off the internet and the activity stopped. When I turned it back on, it resumed. That night, I dreamed of the kitchen counter lighting up again, over and over, with the same words. I woke to the real vibration this time, but the message was different. It read, "Thank you for keeping the phone charged." I did not scream or cry or drop anything, because by then I understood that whatever Mara had been doing, she had accounted for my reactions. I replied with a single word asking how, and the app showed no typing indicator. The message status remained unread. I sat there until morning, realizing that this was not communication, but execution of a plan already finished. The worst part was knowing she had chosen the wording carefully, knowing exactly how it would land. When the sun came up, I stopped waiting for explanations and started reading everything she had left behind. The documents on her laptop were organized with clinical precision, each folder labeled by function rather than feeling. One folder contained instructions for account closures scheduled months ahead, all automated. Another listed passwords with notes about which ones would change after inactivity. There was a final folder, simply labeled safe. Inside, it was a single text file, addressed to no one by name. It explained that safety did not always mean presence, and that disappearance could be managed like any other process. She wrote that once certain conditions were met, it would be safer for everyone to believe she could still check in. The language was calm and procedural, like a user manual. She wrote that the funeral would serve as a hard stop, a point after which no one would look for her. My chest felt hollow as I realized she had anticipated the ceremony, the timing, and even my role in maintaining the illusion. She had set the system so that messages would continue unless I actively dismantled it. The phone buzzed again that afternoon with another scheduled message saying I'm still okay. I did not respond this time. I drove to a storage unit listed in her notes and found it rented under a company name I didn't recognize. Inside were clothes, cash, and a second phone sealed in plastic. That phone contained no personal data, only the same secure app and a list of future send confirmations. It was then that the final piece clicked into place. Mara had not collapsed from something sudden and random. She had orchestrated an exit that required a body, a timeline, and witnesses. The documents included references to identity separation services and medical record vulnerabilities, written without emotion. She had used my house as the final stage because it was controlled. I sat on the concrete floor of the unit and understood that the funeral had not marked an end, but a handoff. The messages were designed to soften the absence, to keep grief from turning into questions. The system did not need her alive to function, only her preparation. Another message arrived that evening saying, "Please, don't worry." I powered off both phones and felt the silence hit like a dropped ceiling. I went back to the house and boxed up every flower, every card, every reminder, because they were part of the cover she had built. The realization was not that she was reaching out from somewhere else, but that she had never intended to be reachable at all. She had turned herself into a process, and I was the last active component. I spent the night deleting scheduled sends and shutting down accounts, knowing each one was a step closer to erasing her entirely. When I deleted the final task, a warning popped up saying confirmation required. The preset message preview appeared on the screen. It said I'm safe. I understood then that safety, in her terms, meant no one coming after her, no one looking too closely. By morning, there were no more messages, no more vibrations, and no more scheduled events. The house was quiet in a way it had not been since she arrived. I realized the horror was not that she might still be out there watching, but that she had trusted me to finish making her gone. I returned the storage unit keys and wiped the laptop exactly as her notes instructed. Step by step, each action felt like signing off on her decision rather than discovering it. Days passed without messages, and the absence felt heavier than the vibrations ever had. I kept thinking about the wording she chose and how carefully neutral it was. She never said she missed me, never said goodbye, never said she was happy. She said she was safe, because that was the only outcome she cared to guarantee. The tragic truth settled slowly, clear and unavoidable. My sister had used her own death as a tool to disappear, and she had rehearsed my reaction in advance. The final revelation was not hidden in a secret file or a last note. It was in the timing. The last scheduled message had been set for the exact moment I finished disabling the system. She had planned for me to be the one to end her voice. When I checked the deleted tasks log, the final entry showed a conditional message that would only send if all others were canceled. I had almost triggered it without knowing. That message read, "You did it." I stared at that line for a long time, realizing it was meant as confirmation, not comfort. There was no mystery left to solve, and no haunting presence to fear. The horror was procedural, deliberate, and complete. She had turned trust into leverage and love into maintenance. I boxed the phone and sealed it away, understanding that keeping it would mean continuing her work. The house eventually lost the smell of flowers and returned to something neutral. Friends stopped calling. Life resumed around the edges. But every time I think of her, I remember the vibration on the counter and the certainty in those two words. The clear ending is this: my sister is not reaching out from beyond anything. She succeeded in vanishing, and I was the final step she needed.